He's running. Welcome to Haven of Horror. This is episode 20. We've got a full house tonight. New guest star for the first time on the show, Doolittle. Uh, Welcome, man. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight because there's more than just the two movies tonight. But first, I thought we'd just give Doolittle a chance to introduce himself and what some of his favorite horror films.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Doolittle, and very happy to be here. It seems like a very nice, group of people. Very very nice people. I've talked to them before. And in terms of like my favorite horror movies, it's very hard to pin down. But I think that overall, I think Evil Dead 2 is probably my favorite horror movie of all time. Just because like I think ideally that's kind of what I'm looking for in a horror film. It's just something really fun, very shot dynamically, has really nice suspense. And that movie also has a lot of comedy, which is really cool. And I think that comedy and horror have a very intrinsic kind of relationship with each other. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And recently, I just watched this film called Repulsion, which I think is my favorite psychological horror film. And psychological horror is kind of like my favorite genre of horror, or like subgenre of horror, rather. So I just watched that. I think that's climbing up the top. That's my favorite of that kind of film. But yeah, that's kind of my taste with all that. Kind of horribly simplistic, but I don't like talking about myself too much.
I've never heard of that Repulsion one. Is that a newer movie or is
Oh,
it an
oh,
older one?
are you talking about the 1965 Roman Polanski film?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I've seen that. That's a fantastic movie. It's
it's awesome.
it's really cool.
And I think it's my
Oh, cool.
favorite of his films. Although Chinatown's really good though as well.
It's like it's the first entry in the Apartment trilogy, right? More or
Yeah,
less.
which
Yeah,
has Rosemary's Baby's also in that too. Yeah.
yeah. Ha!
Oh,
Hey,
I've always
there's
wanted
a
to
horror
see that.
movie that I've watched that you guys haven't watched.
Yeah. Should probably get on all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's
I haven't
directed
even
by
seen
Roman
Chinatown. I'm
Polanski.
a hack.
I
Yeah.
still think that I still think that Rosemary's Baby is like my favorite of the three, but you can watch any of them. They're fascinating to watch.
I've seen Rosemary's Baby, but I would need to rewatch it because I was younger when I saw it. I didn't
And
get
I
it.
was very bored.
As a younger teenager, I was. But yeah, I feel like Doolittle just gave us like a job interview answer. It's like,
Thank you.
but we also have Austin with us again. Welcome back, buddy. It's been a couple episodes.
Yeah,
How've you been?
you can't see it, but there's a ball and chain under, like, attached to my leg. I've been pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Hey Noah, welcome in. Always good to see you. We've been pretty good. We covered Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead last week, and I don't know if you watched that show or any of the shows that we've done it recently, but
Well, I wanted to be there for that, but I just couldn't make it for that weekend.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I'm going to swing back around to that real quick here in a second. But if it hadn't been for Milton, those would have joined the 5 out of 5 list. He gave them both a 4.75.
Well, I mean,
That's yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. Like,
No, like don't get me wrong.
389, yeah.
His review, like his score is his own. I don't want him to change it based on like what I think or anything. But
I mean, they'll change as time goes along anyway.
Yeah, it'll get lower.
Well, some get higher actually. For me, They Live has a higher score in my mind now than when I first gave it a ranking.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't checked out his review, Milton wrote a written review for it. I will post it I will put it in the channel link or in the comments below after the video. So Austin, since you weren't able to be there last week, but you did want to, just really quickly, what do you think of Dawn and Day?
Oh, well, I've only ever watched them with you, so I need to see them kind of again on my own to kind of feel like I didn't miss stuff. But I like both of those movies. I think they're pretty good. I'm not a zombie person like you are, so I don't know if I would go to a 5 out of 5. But it's like a solid like 4.5. Like it's still a great movie.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I prefer Night of the Living Dead though out of the trilogy.
Doolittle, do you want to chime in about Dawn and Day since we're talking about that for just a minute?
Yeah, I definitely really appreciate the social commentary of both of those films. I think that that's kind of inherent with all the Romero Dead films, right?
It's kind of
Um,
zombies in general, I find. Like, out of all horror monsters, they're like the most used for like social commentary and satire, I think.
and allegories, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think between Dawn and Day, I'm gonna go with Dawn. But with that said, I want to rewatch Day and Dawn because I feel like I've given more time to Night. Just because Night's just a film that really like resonated with me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the one I watched first as a kid, right? And like what like the ending to Night of the Living Dead just totally blew my mind when I was a kid, you know. So I think that it's hard to compare that to two other films, you know. So I've just gone back to Night more, you know what I mean? But I want to I love all those movies equally, you know. But I think between Dawn and Day, I think I prefer Dawn. And Night overall I really like, but Day's really good too, and it has one of the best zombie deaths ever.
Yeah.
With getting ripped apart, like oh my god, it's so gruesome, but it's like it's really impactful and you know just really well done. Really well, like very effective.
Absolutely. And that Day is one of the few movies that makes me just squirm watching it with some of the sound mixing and stuff. But I've said my piece on those movies. If you're curious to what I think of them, go watch last week's episode.
Watch our freaking episodes, guys.
But yeah, so this is episode 20. We're covering Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser. But first, we've got a few things that we wanted to discuss. Austin wanted to bring up the Evil Dead game, which I'm perfectly okay with because I'm really excited for it. So Austin, what do you want out of this game?
The world. No. I just want a good Evil Dead game. Like, I'm cool with it being online. I wish there was, single player, obviously. But I don't know, I just want it to be like fun. Like, it kind of looks like the online for Left 4 Dead, which if that's what it's like, then that's cool. I think that'd be fun.
It looks like a mix of like Left 4 Dead with Friday the 13th or Predator, that style. Just from what little we've seen. So one thing I do appreciate about this game is it's not just like, oh, here's all the things you know from like Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. Like it's the whole franchise, or at least the ones with Ashen. Are there any characters that we haven't seen that you want to be in it?
Well, I kind of feel like there's so few characters in the movies. I would like to see like every character if they can. But a character I need to be there is Ted Raimi from Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, see, there'll be like 3 Ted Raimis. It'll just be him from each movie he's in.
Yes.
I know you might disagree with me here, but I would love to see Mia from that remake.
I'd be fine with that. Yeah.
I don't really care about any of the other characters in that remake, but Mia, I would love for her to be in that.
Yeah, no, I have issues with the remake, but overall, I think it's solid.
I was really happy that like we got Evil Dead 1 characters in there, because I feel like every time something new Evil Dead comes out, we just kind of ignore that first movie.
Well, I mean, one of the characters we're getting back is Cheryl, who is Ash's sister in the original, and she did come back for Ash vs. the Evil Dead season 2.
True. That's true.
To be fair, for the forgetfulness, I mean, Evil Dead 1 does not have the strongest characters that you've seen in a horror movie.
Well, no. I just mean like for a while there, but Austin, you're right. Especially with, like Ash vs. Evil Dead, we started to pay more like respect to that first movie.
Yeah.
But it just felt like for a while there, anytime Evil Dead was referenced, it was just like, oh, just the second one, you know.
Austin wants to play a tree in that game, I'm sure.
Oh no!
Oh yes, I do.
But I think Scott is in it too, which is
yes, he is.
Cool.
Oh, and then we also get stuff like I think Henry the Red is in it. They showed off that Evil Ash is going to be in it.
Oh, I don't know. Is Henry is he in it? I know Arthur is. I'm not sure about him.
Maybe that's who I'm thinking of. But while I look into that, Doolittle and Milton, do you guys have any thoughts or anything you want from this game?
Well, I mean, hope is a strong word for it. I mean, let's hope it actually turns out to be a good game and it's not just there for, I don't know, cash grab or whatnot. Because it's definitely easy for those games to fall into that. All I can say is I just hope they do a good job with it. I hope there's someone with passion behind. But it's also an Evil Dead thing, so I can't help but think that it might maybe do what other games did in the past with this property and try to rely a bit more off of Army of Darkness, I would think. Or maybe Ash versus the Evil Dead. There's not really a whole lot you can do in terms of a video game off of the first two movies.
Did you watch the trailers for it?
I've seen a little. I've seen a little bit of it. I always distrust trailers in general. I try to
Fair enough.
I try to accent
I
those
meant
as
more
if I
so
haven't
like
seen
the gameplay one, but yeah.
To answer your question, Austin, I did a little researching, and there are stills from the game with Henry the Red.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, Milton, I agree with you, which is why I was happy during the gameplay trailer. They showed there are characters from every iteration of at least the original continuity, and I use continuity lightly here with these movies, but because you've got characters from the first one, you've got actually, you know what? I don't think we've seen anyone from 2 except for, of course, Ash.
Yeah, but I'm sure we're probably saving some of that stuff.
Yeah,
like there's no way Henrietta isn't like a playable Deadite.
Yeah, and then we've got, like we discussed, we've got characters from Army of Darkness,
and there's stuff that I wouldn't have expected too. Like you can play as that kind of like glitchy looking demon thing from the first season of Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that Kelly and Pablo are in it. I was thinking about this earlier because to segue a little bit as well into Evil Dead Rise. I hate that title, by the way.
It's not good.
I kind of hope they're playing it close to the chest and like Kelly or Pablo shows up in that movie. Because like I don't know, there's just it feels so disconnected from the franchise, which is fine. Of course, make the movie first, but like I don't know, it's Evil Dead. There's always been like characters that move from one movie to another, except for the remake.
Well, it's the start of the shared universe.
There are things that I would love to see a shared universe for. Evil Dead is not one of them.
It doesn't have the strongest terms of a universe exactly. It has a continuity. It has a kind of a loose continuity between 2 and Army of Darkness, and then Army of Darkness to Ash versus the Evil Dead. But that's it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
nothing else.
And there is kind of like a multimedia kind of part to it, right? Because there's like comic books, and then there's a TV show. So there's that, but that's not like.
That's true.
It's not the same thing as like a shared universe, though, right? Like that's just like I don't know. I'm not really enthusiastic about a shared universe for Evil Dead, but I'm hoping the movie's good. I hope the movie's good as its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, I've read some of those comics, and I don't know if you have, Austin, but at least the ones that I read from Dynamite didn't feel like Evil Dead. It just felt like taking Ash and just throwing him in like other properties, because you've got like Ash meeting Xena and like Darkman and things like that. And it was fine.
Marvel Zombies, Freddy and Jason.
He scored off against
the Freddy versus Jason versus Ash one was awesome. But I mean,
I'd like to read that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that wasn't out of print, but anyway, moving on. We've got a couple of movie announcements to talk about. The first one being Blumhouse is giving the remake of Christine over to Brian Fuller. Austin, I know you haven't seen it, but Hannibal is one of the best shows like of recent memory, and he show ran that, so I'm really excited to see what he does with that property.
I need to watch.
Was he the showrunner of Punisher then? Because wasn't that the same showrunner as Hannibal?
I don't think so.
Was he? No, I don't think so. But I can look that up real quick.
I don't think so.
I remember that being a big thing. That's like the showrunner of Hannibal was doing Punisher, and this was just somebody else on that show. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe there's someone from the Hannibal writing staff.
Brian Fuller.
But no, Brian Fuller is the one who was supposed to originally do Discovery.
Yeah,
but then
yeah,
he
I remember
left.
that. Yeah.
He also did the 2002 Carrie that I haven't seen. That was like a made-for-TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
He was a writer on Hero season 1 and 3 and 4. Season 1 was really good, at least.
Season 1 was good.
The big thing that I worry about with this movie is Brian Fuller is known to leave projects over the littlest thing. And this is, from what I understand, a Sony and Blumhouse co-production.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So
that was my reaction.
I'm excited for the potential of this movie that we have right now.
It could be gimped from the get-go, though, because of that.
But it could also be sabotaged from the beginning, because if he's going to leave the project the first time, something happens with the production studios, unless they get somebody.
I don't trust Sony and Blumhouse enough on this, and I don't know.
But
I don't know if it'll have the right budget either, and I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. I'm potentially excited because when we talked about Christine, I think that movie is due for a readaptation, because that movie's fine. It's just not my thing.
I just hope that they do practical effects with the cars.
That will not happen.
Well, that's
although
I don't want a remake.
Although I was surprised that they actually used a cat for the remake of Pet Sematary, so maybe.
Yeah, too bad that movie sucked.
I mean, the original does too.
The original's not
bad. No, both those movies suck.
The original one has its fans. I know someone who's a huge fan of the original Pet Sematary movie, which is interesting because I don't know.
But yeah, so I mean, that's really all we know at this point. It's just there is a Christine remake in the works, and it seems like we're going to get a lot of Stephen King readaptations, which I'm happy about, because a lot of those older Stephen King movies, most of them aren't great.
He doesn't have a good track record for adaptation. Yeah,
you get stuff like The Shining, of course, but
yeah, what are you most excited for as a Stephen King fan for it to be for one of his works to be readapted?
I would love to see. Well, the one that I was most excited for, we already did, and it was on CBS All Access, and from what I've heard, it sucked. So, I'm gonna give runner-up to either Christine. I would love to see that redone, because I think that first movie is really flawed. Or I'd love to see a new Dead Zone. I haven't seen the original, but I would love to see a new.
How about a Gunslinger, though? That might be cool if they can actually do it properly.
But my first answer would have been The Stand, but CBS got their hands all over it. From what
I'm gonna say Cujo would be one that I think that you could do better now. And then I'm gonna transition and say Salem's Lot, which is another one that's getting remade. Yeah. Although I'm not sure about that one either. But Jake Gyllenhaal has apparently been offered the role for that.
As the lead priest, or
no, as the lead, I think.
Oh, the reporter guy.
Yeah,
he'd be good for that.
Yeah, so I could see it.
I didn't really look at the article too much because I wanted to just discuss it on stream. Other than James, we know James Wan is producing. Do we have any other information?
Here, I can look it up quickly. That's the big thing that I know, is that I'm pretty sure James Wan is producing it.
Well, I hope it's better than the last movie he produced.
Well, he's not he doesn't produce the best movies.
No, he doesn't. Well, because you know what the last two movies he produced was.
Well, he produces all of the Conjuring universe films, and the Insidious sequels after he left, and probably the Saw sequels, I would think.
Yeah, I think some of them. I think he had less to do with those than Bousman did. Bousman was more those. But I think he also produced Mortal Kombat.
Yes, he did. Because it was announced that he was producing a Mortal Kombat film a year before it came out, and that was when they were like, there's a new Mortal Kombat movie coming out.
Yeah. I like that movie less the more I've thought about it.
I held out hope for so long,
So did I.
So it's being directed by Gary Dauberman.
Ooh.
I ain't gonna find that out.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is either.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
He is the writer for Annabelle Creation, all the Annabelle movies, both It movies. So, although to be fair, It Chapter 1 he did a rewrite of. So that's
Yeah, I think some of that was Fukunaga's script, right?
He actually, if you follow the scripts, he actually brought a lot of that stuff back because there is a script in between them that cuts out a lot of his stuff. And Dauberman brings a lot of that back, from what I understand. But he started from the ground up with It Chapter 2, which is way not as good.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair to It Chapter 2, it's also like I know it's its job to like make that material better, but it's also stuck with the weakest part of that book. So it's kind of what I expected from whatever that movie was when they did the adult stuff in the book.
I mean, it was still pretty bad, though.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Although most of that is direction, I think, in a way.
Could be. I also think it's hurt by the first movie being so self-contained, because they had to like retroactively shove a lot of the lore into the movie. I'd like to see.
Yeah, and I doubt in the script it says something like really bad CGI naked elderly woman comes running at Bev.
So I have to admit, when I saw that in theater, that startled the crap out of me because I wasn't expecting it. But then I looked at it again. I was like, "What the fuck is this? This looks terrible." It just like caught me off guard.
It's really silly.
But yeah, so I mean, those I hate those Annabelle movies. Oh, God, please get a good screenwriter. That's all I ask. Like maybe a good.
Jake Gyllenhaal, from what I've heard, like has pretty solid like quality
control.
Quality control, I guess. Like, I guess not really control, but you know what I mean. Like, he's pretty good at picking projects. So I guess if he picks it,
he has decent taste when he looks at the script.
So if he takes that role, it might be good. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. The other big news is that the new Predator film is going to be direct to HBO, or not HBO Max, Hulu.
A direct to Hulu Predator movie? Jeez.
To be fair, that came out later. Like, it was supposed to go to theaters.
And also, like
this is more of like a Soul type situation or something like that, or like the HBO Max movies, like where it's like, okay, well, let's just put this in.
So what is this one called? Predators?
It's just Predator 5 right now. Like they don't.
It was supposed to be called Skulls, but
and like,
because if you don't know, George, it was going to be called Skulls, and they weren't going to advertise it as a Predator movie, and that was just going to be a surprise for when you watched it.
A freaking 10 Cloverfield Lane situation we got going.
Not really. What?
Well, I mean, kind of. Well,
what do you mean?
Are you just saying things now? Like,
my brain's a little weird right now because of. But I guess I was thinking that. But I was thinking of along the lines of it's not really connected to the original thing, except at the very end, or something like that.
No, it was going to be a Predator movie, but they weren't like. It was being made as a Predator movie, but they wanted that to be a surprise.
Okay, I see. I gotcha.
Yeah,
and like let's be honest here. A straight to Hulu movie doesn't mean anything anymore in terms of quality. Some
I wouldn't know. We don't have Hulu.
Well, but I mean, just in general, a lot of big movies that you would expect to go to theaters are going straight to streaming. It's just the nature of.
It's just Hollywood's changing.
Yeah,
it's time we change too.
You could tell me that the next Marvel movie is going to be only on Disney Plus if it wouldn't blink.
But yeah, Austin, just get a VPN, man, if you don't have Hulu.
No, because I don't have to pay for Hulu. We basically get it for free.
Yeah, you have Disney Stars, dude.
Milton, can you calm down with the just get a like, come on.
I'm not using your 20% off code. Leave me alone.
NordVPN, if you do want to sponsor us, that'd be
Please
awesome.
don't.
Shut up, Austin. You don't come on enough to have that kind of request power.
Well, I'm not using NordVPN. Not that I wouldn't if they gave me a code.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much all the news. Let's just do this, I think, in release order. That's usually what we've been doing. But for last thing if we start is, so Austin, you put together the list of movies that we picked from. Why did you pick these two movies specifically together? Like, fuck, I don't remember now.
Yeah, because it was months ago I put together that list. I want to say it was probably something about it being more like kind of like that supernatural type like thing. I don't know.
We'll go with it.
Dreams like a box, right?
So
Yeah.
Austin,
Pretty similar.
Austin, tell us about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh god, I wish I could remember the lyrics to Nightmare on My Street so I could use that as my description. Nightmare on Elm Street is a film about bad dreams and characters that die in their dreams by a Christmas mascot named Freddy. And he's got very long nails and a fedora. That's the movie.
Nightmare on Elm Street, a movie about bad dreams and even badder men.
Exactly.
So this is obviously one of the last big original slashers of the 80s. You know, the slashers were kind of like on their last leg, at least in terms of like new ones being made. Of course, the big three continued to go throughout the 2000s. But I think this is probably the most unique of any of the slasher movies that are out there.
At least in terms of premise, yeah. We're trying to do something besides just knife-wielding maniac runs at you or slowly walks at you.
Yeah. Probably the most interesting killer out of the big three slashers. But also very much, this is kind of like a rough draft of what Freddy would become. He's much more like serious in this movie. You get moments of levity, of course, but he's not like cracking jokes every 5 minutes like he is in the later sequence. So how do you guys rank Freddy in the movie slasher monster list?
I don't know about movie monster, but in terms of slasher, he's probably my favorite.
Interesting.
Just because like Halloween is a better movie, but Michael Myers like isn't a character. Like he's more of a like image. Like he's the boogeyman. He's not a character. While Freddy is a character. So if I'm ranking like slasher characters, Freddy would be number one. I don't know about overall just horror monster icons though. I'd have to think about that.
I put him up there with Jason, which is why they should have a movie where they fight.
I think for me it's like, oh wait, Milton, is that for you?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
You're just being stupid.
No, but I think for me it's like I think Freddy is my favorite because my thing is with Michael Myers and with Jason, it's like Jason's kind of like Godzilla. Like you kind of watch those movies and like he's just kind of like a force of nature, you know, just coming in. Although there is some interesting stuff, you know, kind of. I think surprisingly there is some pathos with Jason because it's like, you know, he was drowned in a lake as a child, you know, and like he's like taking vengeance upon like these like camp counselors or whatever because he's like probably like angry, you know, probably you know, enacting that kind of revenge. And there's some interesting stuff too of Jason being triggered by sex, in some ways, for like his violence, and that he doesn't kill children too is also interesting. So I think Jason's interesting on that level, but that's like over analyzing those movies, at least to me. And Michael Myers is very interesting in how he is as like a device in the first Halloween film, the Carpenter film. I think attempts to dive deeper into explaining him makes him less scary. Yeah. Also, Freddy has kind of an advantage in that was the one that scared me as a child. Like that, I would have nightmares about Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean? Which is even scarier because what those movies are about, right? So, no, he definitely has a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, you can never run away from your dreams.
No.
I'm gonna say he's my third favorite of the big slasher icons.
That's true.
I really love Nightmare 1 and 3 and New Nightmare, but I'm a Jason guy. I'm a Jason guy.
Sure.
But I really like how they unintentionally parallel each other in some ways. One the quote Freddy versus Jason in one of those awful dialogue scenes. One died by water, one by fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Freddy as the boogeyman in a different way than Michael. Michael is I don't know, Austin, what would you say? Like the symbolic boogeyman, whereas Freddy is the literal boogeyman in your dreams.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he definitely has the most interesting kills because with the premise they have, they can go all out like wacky, weird shit. Like in 3, where he's using the one guy as like a marionette with his veins and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're more grounded in this movie, but as they go forward, they kind of play with that idea a bit more.
It's almost like they got more money.
It definitely gives a very interesting sense of tension, like leading up to where he's going to be next, because he only appears in dreams, and eventually people have to sleep.
Yeah.
It's not like with Jason where you can eventually just keep avoiding it for like to an eternity, or Michael Myers.
You clearly have never seen a Friday the 13th movie, my friend, because that motherfucker teleports.
Well, I saw 6 and X with you guys, so But of course, the point is, we don't really get a sense. You could get at least some illusion of safety, of keeping some distance between you and Jason. But Freddy, that rule doesn't exist unless you bring him out into the real world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the only
Locations.
cool ideas we bring in for the remake, which is like the characters stay up so long that they kind of like, kind of do like one of those types of things. And they start to like hallucinate him while they're actually awake because like they've gone so long without sleeping. That movie's
Yeah.
still awful, but that idea itself could be really good in a good Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah.
There's a couple ideas. I'm sorry, Doodle.
Oh no, you go ahead. Actually,
there is a couple ideas from that remake I'd like to see them retry in a better movie. Because that one, and then they almost win me over with the he was innocent the whole time thing. It doesn't go anywhere, of course, because that movie sucks. But yeah, I'd like to see them try something like that again.
Yeah, when I was watching this movie for the first time, and this is the only Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street movie that I've seen, I thought it would be an interesting idea if the reason why he's a vengeful ghost is because he was an innocent person. I mean, the movie definitely doesn't dress it up that way exactly, but they never explicitly say that he did something.
But rewinding really quick, what were you going to say to them?
Oh, I was just gonna say I really, really like that Nancy in this film. Like she's like drinking coffee all the time. Like she's like trying her best not to go to sleep. I do like that idea that like maybe as the movie goes on, she becomes more and more delusional. As she's like kind of like struggling to fall asleep. And I never saw the remake. I only saw like parts of it, and I was just kind of bored. I was like, oh my god, why are we doing this? But
Good on you, yeah.
yeah, I didn't know that they did that though. I didn't know that they took that and they like ran with it. They probably
Yeah,
didn't
like
do
there's
it
a scene,
effectively,
for
but
example, where she's in, I think, a drugstore looking for like pills, to keep her awake. And as she's walking, she's like drifting in and out of like a dream world and the real world. So he's like sometimes he's like standing at the end of the aisle, and then sometimes he's not. Like it's just kind of flashing back and forth.
It's the only time that Freddy looks menacing because you can't see him.
yeah, that movie was really bad.
But yeah, with the Milton, the innocent and guilty thing, they play it up for like 5 minutes in the remake that he might have been innocent and the kids lied. And the whole thing in that movie is he's not a child murderer; he's a child molester.
Yeah,
Which was the original idea for this movie, but they went back on it.
Yeah, which I honestly think the molester thing it was smart of them to drop it, especially in the like that doesn't affect this movie, but especially in the sequels, where you start to kind of root for Freddy over the kids. I don't know. It's weird. It would be weird if he was like a child molester. We have movies like scenes that hint at it. I think Freddy versus Jason kind of hints at it too, but it's never like explicitly said. It leaves it to the imagination.
Well, I thought wasn't one of the original drafts for Freddy versus Jason that like Freddy molested Jason as a camp counselor?
Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah.
Austin, there's a book just about the making of Freddy versus
I have
Jason.
that book. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I do have it.
I've never finished it, but it's fascinating. The one where they're in a boxing ring in hell, surrounded by like all the most evil figures on earth, is wow. You guys really overthought that one. But
yeah, for this movie, one big thing I hear a lot is that Heather Langenkamp, the woman who plays Nancy, is really bad in this movie. What do you guys think about that? Because personally, I think she's fine. Like in terms of these kind of performances, like she's not amazing or anything, but like I like her well enough in this movie.
I thought she was believable.
Yeah, she's fine. I don't think she.
Oh, go ahead.
She has a scream queen energy, I would say.
I think too, for me, it's hard for me to be distracted by her performance when her mother is legitimately like an awful actress.
No, the mom is terrible in this movie. She's not good.
I think she's inconsistent. Okay. She's really good at being the brave final girl. But when she has to play just like a scared teenager, I think her performance is weaker. In some scenes. But overall I really like Nancy. And I think she gets better in part 3.
Yeah, I like her scene in the classroom where she wakes up from the nightmare and the teacher's like, I'm gonna call you to like go home or whatever. Like I thought that was good. I thought that she did a good performance there.
With her cameo of Lin Shaye, yeah.
Oh yeah. So I thought that was good, but I see what you mean though. She I think she does really well with like the bigger stuff, I guess.
Yeah. The most when I notice is when she has to like cry or like be upset about like someone dying or begging her parents to pay attention. She's really inconsistent. But I agree that the mom is terrible. But
with
I also
one vodka bottle prop that they had that she just walks around with.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm more forgiving of the mom being bad because John Saxon is awesome as Nancy's dad. And I wish he was more. I wish he was in this more.
Absolutely.
I might counter on that. I think he has just the right amount because he is supposed to be a bit more of a distant figure in his daughter's life.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not in it enough. I'm fine with how much he's in it, but I also wouldn't complain if he was in it more.
Oh, no. Sure.
So, Austin and Doolittle, if you've seen the other movies, do you kind of agree with me? There's almost a trilogy of movies here with 1, 3, and New Nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting trilogy to watch.
Yeah, well, that's the those are the movies that are most commonly recommended to people, right? Like it's like because those are like seen as like the best.
Those
They're
are
the good ones, yeah.
Yeah.
It has exactly 2 more good ones than Hellraiser.
Oh wow.
Well,
that makes sense.
But what do you guys think of the supporting cast here? We got Johnny Depp in his first movie role. He's fine.
He's fine.
I think most of the actors in this movie are just kind of fine, with the exception of the mom. Everybody else, yeah, like nobody really jumps out at me and is like, this person's a really good actor. I don't know, like, inconsistent maybe. Like I remember the was Rod, I think, being a little wonky like here and there, but like overall, he's fine.
Rod,
The woman,
Rod is a weird character to me because some of it is, of course, just a cultural difference because these are supposed to be like kids in the '80s, and I didn't grow up in the '80s. He of all of them does not feel like a teenager. He most of all feels like a 30-year-old man pretending to be a teenager.
Because he's a 50s greaser that just shows up.
Yeah, he definitely was probably the most jarring inclusion in this. He does not belong at all in this movie.
And he also has the lamest death. Like,
yeah,
he gets hung by bed sheets.
It has always been weird to me because Freddy doesn't care about trying to be like conspicuous with Tina or what's Johnny Depp's character's name? Glenn. But for some reason, with Rodney, he tries to make it look like a suicide. It's really strange.
It is a little odd, but I mean,
well, I guess with Tina, the big thing is that, like, sure, he's more over the top, but she's also in a room with like another person, so you could also say like that was his idea to frame Rod.
Yeah, and he was trying to make it seem like Rod committed suicide because of like sometimes unfortunately that happens in prison.
I suppose.
And some of it, of course, is overthinking it because like I'm sure they were just like, what can we do that looks cool? Like,
you heard it here first, folks. Freddy Krueger killed Epstein.
Oh.
But then you wonder about the conspicuous nature of things like Glenn's death, and then you wonder, but I don't know, maybe just amused him to use bed sheets.
What I would think is, don't they reuse the prop? They reuse the same prop for Tina and Glenn's death, right? The rotating house. I wonder if they just ran out of money, so they didn't have anything to do with what's his name's death.
Maybe. Do you know? Well, they actually had to cut that death down for the movie because it's actually very confusing what originally happened. Because the blood comes out, and I mean, I know calling this death confusing is maybe like duh, but the blood shoots out, and then Johnny Depp comes out of the bed, and I think he like falls over, and he's dead.
Yeah,
it's just very confusing.
That's very confusing.
But do you guys know about that whole sequence when they filmed that?
I do, but go ahead and tell us so that we,
So, for those of you who don't know, in the scene where Tina dies, they have a room that can like move around, so that the actress can like go up the walls and then onto the ceiling and so forth. Like it was a rotating room, and they reused that for Glenn's death, but they didn't actually think about like what would happen when they dumped all the blood down. So the blood hits the floor of that room and knocks the room like off balance, and the entire room just started spinning and like sent lights flying and stuff, and people had to like jump out of the way or else they'd get hit by it. Like it was a huge disaster. Yeah, they broke a ton of stuff doing it. Luckily nobody was injured.
That's good.
But it's crazy.
Yeah, so with that kill as well, with the Johnny Depp one, because that I think is the most confusing, even though it's probably my favorite just because of how cool it is.
Well, that was one of the ones they used for his Mortal Kombat 9 appearance.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I also think that one kind of breaks the rules a little bit that we set up. Because, like, yeah, whatever happens to you in the dream happens to you in the real world, but usually it's the real world equivalent, right? Like, she just gets scratched and dragged across the ceiling. How does that hole open up in his bed?
Well, then you could really ask, generally speaking, because the film asks this question like, what is real and what is fake? Basically, it's a whole Inception, discussion where what is it that we see is real within the diegetic world, and then what is a dream? When does a dream actually stop? Because
Which
it
is a big
definitely,
thing for the climax, yeah.
it could be that Glenn never died, and that Nancy is just stuck in this dream loop.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff to talk about as well at the ending because it's severely compromised.
Maybe Nancy was one of the original victims of Freddy. Maybe she was living through a purgatorial cycle.
Oh my god.
Okay.
It's all symbolic of menstruation. That's what Glenn's death meant.
John Glenn?
I started to say John, and I was like, wait, no, his name's Glenn. John, when you died, that's what happened.
Damn. I think it's a deleted scene, but I read somewhere once that one of the ideas they had was that like Nancy's older sister was one of Freddy's original victims, and that's why
there was a whole thing. I think a few of the characters they were supposed to have dead older siblings.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad they cut that because I feel like why I feel like why would you hide that from like your children? You know what I mean? Like how they were killed, right? I don't know. That's just me. I feel like that was probably
it's that double-edged sword, right? Because yeah, that seems like a weird thing to hide. Although it may not even been that they hid it. I don't know the full context. It may just been like they hid how they died. But I also think without that, it just makes all the parents seem like crazy people. At least Nancy and Nancy's parents, they burned this guy alive because he killed kids. But like, what's their connection? You know?
Well, it was because she had her bottle of vodka that she still has to this day. It was actually the bottle that she killed him with.
Yeah.
Well, see, it wasn't just one bottle, and she just buys that like same brand. She's got a whole closet.
Well, no, it's the same bottle, and she's got like a Captain America arm with it. So like they lit the building on fire, and she threw it through the window. It hit him into the fire, and then came back to her, and then she drank some more.
My favorite part with that whole thing is just like showing all the crazy places she hides that bottle. Like she's got it in the towel closet.
Like under towels, yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
Reminds me of the sorority mother from Black Christmas a little bit, where like she's like a complete wreck. She is like hiding like her like liquor everywhere.
I've only seen that once, and we were in a watch party in one of the Discords that we're in, and I think somebody had come in and they just like would not stop talking over it. So I just gave up. So like I don't remember anything about that movie, but I liked what I like could pay attention to. So I'd like to rewatch.
I had the same thing. Yeah, I need to rewatch that. Canadian horror classic.
That would be a good Christmas time episode.
That's the one I have for Christmas. Yeah, is Gremlins and Black Christmas.
Well, and we're gonna do Anna and the Apocalypse around that time too. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much just this simple, slasher movie, just with a dreams thing, thrown in the mix to make it different enough from what was coming out at the time. Because a lot of slashers were just, here's a guy in a mask going after horny teenagers.
Yeah.
I think. What do you guys think of some of the effects in this movie? Like, because for me, I think it's inconsistent, but mostly good. You get obviously stuff like when his arms extend, you can tell that they're clearly like fake arms, like they scrunch up in places.
Yeah.
And the ending effect is one of the worst effects I've ever seen in a major movie.
Yeah.
But stuff like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but there's other stuff outside of that. Like I think most of the deaths look really cool. The rotating room is really cool. like the Freddy phone thing is pretty cool. And Heather Langenkamp actually asked to keep that prop, which is a little weird, but
I'm with you. It's inconsistent. You get stuff like my go-to for one I love is like when she rips Freddy's face off.
That's a good one too, yeah.
But then you've also got like the arm thing, which it's really funny to hear them talk about like the making of that because they shot a lot of this just like on location in like small towns. Like that scene is shot on location, and nobody knew they were shooting a movie, so they would just see like Robert Englund with like this contraption on chasing after a girl. And they, if I remember correctly, it's been years since I looked into this, but they talked about how like one of them called the cops on him because he was chasing her down an alley.
911, what's your emergency? There's a man with 15-foot arms and he's running down an alleyway.
And the finger, like you get where he like cuts off the finger. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, he slices down his chest.
Although that one looks weird because it's just like he's not burned from the neck down.
That is weird, yeah. No, I agree with that. But...
Yeah, apparently he's supposed to be like a maggot-filled corpse, but he's not a burned corpse at the same time. So
we fixed that in the sequels when they have more money.
Yeah,
we redo that shot like at least once or twice more where he like cuts his chest open.
For that Freddy.
In the bedroom where you see him going through it or whatever. And the way that they did that effect was like really simple, but like really
real. And have you seen where they do that in the remake?
Yeah, it's all CGI. It looks terrible.
And he like slides around the room and he like comes out in his class coat. It's one of the worst things ever. And it was, like you said, one of the easiest effects to do originally. Like they just cut a hole in the wall and they had, was it like latex or something? Like a thing over it, and they just had a guy press on it. Like that's it.
Yeah.
It's really effective.
Mm-hmm. And you get stuff like the tub scene, which is also just a really simple like effect. Although I don't know which is worse, Austin, the thing at the end with this movie or the ending of the remake where it's that really bad, like he shoves his claw through the mom's head in that one, and it's just like CGI claw sticking out of a CGI head.
In the remake, they did a good job of making sure that they stuck to the last effect in the film, the last shot of the film being one of the worst effects ever put on screen.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I can give the remake.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
I mean,
it was the 80s, so they can afford being a little weird.
I don't think
it makes me laugh that she so clearly turns into a blow-up doll. And then it's just like they just pull her through. Like it just after the entire movie, it looks so cheap.
So there's not a lot else I think to talk about with the majority of the movie. So let's talk about the ending, which is of course
completely compromised. Yeah,
the most compromised thing. Wes Craven, of course, did not intend this to be a franchise, and even 3, which is considered, I think, the best one out of the first 6. It's hard to count 7 because that's its own thing. But he wrote a script for it, and then they just completely rewrote it. Because he wrote like a really dark and like angry script, and like Freddy. I've seen bits of that original Nightmare 3 script. I don't know if any of you guys have, but like Freddy cursed like a sailor and would like talk dirty at his victims, and it was really weird.
Oh wow,
it's a lot darker, yeah.
But obviously, New Line is like, we're putting a lot of money into this movie. At least a lot of money, for what they had. We want to be able to make this franchise if it does well.
Well, that's a big thing too. Was that this was the first real big movie for New Line? I think they had one film before this, but before that they were just doing. I want to say it wasn't transfers, but it was like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like they weren't making their own movies at that point.
And this was still before they became a part of Warner Brothers, I believe.
Yes.
They were still kind of in their kind of infancy.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this was, I think, their second or third film that they even put out.
So they did a bunch of distribution for films.
Distribution, that was the word I meant, not transfer. Yep.
But because they also did the U.S. distribution for Evil Dead. But Freddy Krueger is really the one that made them like a production company. And in fact, as I'm sure you guys know, New Line for a long time was the house that Freddy built. Because if that movie had flopped, we wouldn't have a New Line cinema.
And we probably would not have the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or
yeah, a lot of movies that they produced. I mean,
or Secondhand Lions, another one of my favorite movies.
We wouldn't have the '90s TMNT movie.
No,
Yeah, New Line was great. Yeah, absolutely.
But I do feel for Wes Craven in a way because he had to compromise what he wanted to do, and that ending is nonsense. Like I don't understand what's happening in the end of the movie.
I didn't know.
Well, and the big thing I think too is they shot like 6 endings because they legitimately didn't really know what to do with this.
Yeah,
and they just kind of, I think from what I've heard, the scene at the end isn't even one of the endings they shot. It's just like different shots from different endings that they shot.
Oh God, really? I didn't even know.
Like it's a mess. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's probably the thing that really hurts this movie the most. Effects aside, certain things in the script that I think could be improved. Like I cringe and laugh every time Tina's like Tarzan fix Jane towards the beginning. I'm like, what the fuck? What is? But yeah, the ending is just nonsensical, and I don't understand what it means. To the relation of the rest of the film. Was the whole movie a dream? Are we in a dream now? Like,
well, from my interpretation from this probably poorly cobbled ending, we definitely get the same girls jumping rope that we saw towards the beginning of the movie. We definitely get these sections in the beginning that allude to perhaps not exactly a fixed sense of time, because we see Freddy putting on his glove. You think maybe this is a flashback, or maybe it's in some sort of present dream time or something like that, where he's putting it on again. But unfortunately, because of the weird nature of how time works in this movie, we don't really know what is real and what isn't. Which I guess is what they banked on in terms of marketability for this movie, I suppose.
I guess.
Sequels or
Mm-hmm.
I think the main point was just to have that ending where, the slasher's not really gone,
Yeah, this is like one of the times when you probably should establish more rules, I would think. Because sometimes it's good to have some ambiguity, but in this case, you really need to put some more concrete things for us to latch onto, I think.
See, I think the rules are fine as they're established, because all we really need to know is whatever happens in the dream world will happen in the real world, and he can kill you in your dream. That is the conceit to this movie. But because they didn't know how to end this movie, and we've got two people who have different visions for the ending, it almost feels like it's a different movie for like the last 5 minutes. Austin, have you ever
minute? Yeah. What's that?
Have you ever had like an idea of what's happening there at the
end? Robert Chase said, "I want more money," and that was the ending. No, it's like I can follow all throughout the climax. Where she's in a dream, she thinks she wakes up, but not really. She's still in a dream, and then she says, like, Freddy, I'm not afraid of you anymore. And then he disappears, which became a huge cliche. And I wish we'd stop now. But after that, like when she turns around and she's, in the daylight again with the mom and all the kids are there, and she gets in the car, roof comes down, blow up doll gets pulled through the door. It's just kind of like I almost ignore that scene in a way. Like, just I don't know, that entire scene I think is pretty bad.
Yeah, because like you could end it with him disintegrating and still do like a sequel. Like that doesn't. Sorry, you could almost just say, yeah, she repelled him, but he's not dead. You can't kill Freddy like in the dream world.
He disappears. Freddy disappears. Her dad comes in and he's like, and she's like, "We killed him, Dad." And he's like, "Well, he died once, daughter."
He can die
Then
again.
the final countdown starts blasting as it cuts to credits.
What do you think, Doolittle? It's your idea.
I think the way I saw it was I just thought that whole thing was a dream, but I don't understand the continuity of it. I think that might be the biggest problem for me is I don't understand the continuity of it and how it like fits in overall, right? Like I don't know. It's weird.
I don't think Wes Craven did either.
Yeah, I don't think Wes Craven even wanted that to be a thing. So I don't know. It's a very unfortunate situation.
No, he was pretty mad about that.
That doesn't really surprise me. He gets mad about stuff quite a bit with that.
Yeah, and of course, rest in peace, Wes Craven. He changed like the entire face of horror at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect him as a filmmaker, but God, have you guys ever listened to him talk in interviews like before he passed away?
Mm-hmm.
I've read, but I haven't ever seen it. But he seems like a pretty angry person, or he was an angry person.
I don't know if this is disrespectful to say, so I'm just going to reiterate all the respect in the world to him. Nightmare and Scream are two of my favorite movies. The guy was full of himself at times about some of his movies.
Oh wow! Yeah.
He talks about like Nightmare on Elm Street as like it's some piece of like high art that none of the other sequels ever managed to surpass. I'm like, dude, I love your first movie, but the third one is better.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I've also seen. Yeah, and I've also seen movies like Cursed, which was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, does anybody
want to do horror movies? I think he wanted to do romantic comedies. I think is what he wanted to do. There's just like romance movies. I think so. That kind of makes sense too with that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. I was just gonna say, is there any final thoughts before we move on to our next film?
This movie continues Wes Craven's fetish for traps. Which now that I said that out loud, I realized it didn't come out as much like I thought in my head.
He likes contraptions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like Fred from Scooby-Doo, he loves his traps.
He likes snares, sorts, obstacles. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Women who are secretly men.
Oh.
But no, because in his early films, he does a lot of traps, and I think this is kind of the end of that. Like, I feel like this is like the last one that he did like that.
Yeah.
But that came up a lot in his early filmography.
Yeah, I think this is the last one that he really did like that.
Mm-hmm. Also, Freddy when he's on fire and he walks up the stairs is pretty cool, especially because the stunt person that does, and you can tell that it's not Robert Englund, and that he is clearly wearing a suit because he's like 50 pounds buffer than Freddy normally is. But the way like the stunt guy walks up the stairs and then accidentally falls back down and has to walk up again, because that was all by accident. It ended up working out really well, and it looks great.
Yeah. I really wish that this franchise had more than 3 good movies, because I think there is a solid franchise here. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like some of the movies, but they're not good. Fake. But yeah, I mean, for my final score, I'm gonna give this one a 4. Like, it's a good movie. It's an important film in that particular subgenre, of course. And Robert Englund, like, it put Robert Englund on the map, and I love Robert Englund.
I guess I'll go next. I'm gonna give this a 3.5. I think this is a movie that I like quite a bit. This was actually the movie that really got me into horror back in the day. Like, I liked stuff like Alien and Predator before that, but this was the first movie where I was like, oh, I really like this genre, and then that's what pushed me forward into watching more of it. I don't think it's perfect. Like, there's definitely issues with it. I think some of the rules are a little muddy and so forth, and like it's a great premise, and it's still a really good movie, but yeah, it's just not as good as I think it could have been. Doolittle,
Either one of you
what's
two.
your thought? Yeah.
I was thinking.
Normally you tell people.
Oh no, I was thinking I would go last because I was the guest, but I could go now, I guess. I'm thinking like a 4. Because it's got like it has like some minor things that I'm like kind of confused by, but like overall, I really really like it. It's a great movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Come on, Milton.
Spit out your 3.78965432 out of 5, sir.
Now, for me, I shall rate this. I go back and forth on this because there's I give an eye for some of the technical stuff, and sometimes there are things where you really should have done a better job in certain places, especially when you're highlighting a certain thing within the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Freddy's noodly arms, it just shows where there's this intimidating figure of Robert Englund, and he does a great job, but then you attach something ridiculous to him, and that's how I feel about the entire movie. It's like I can see some great stuff in there, but occasionally there are things where there's this like spot of dead air here. So the pacing could be better in one section, and then the other.
You get the mom who can't act.
Yeah, so I'll give it a 3.3. Because I can't rate it a 3 because I think it's better quality than that, but I can't do a 3.5 because I don't think it's missing some stuff that really got me into movies like Hellraiser, for instance, or which we can.
We'll get to that in just a second. One last thing just about Nightmare, and this is mostly at Austin, and I think and Doolittle. Have you seen 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
I've
guys
seen
think?
all of them.
Well, I know you have.
No, you didn't. You know that because I just told you.
Whatever. Do you guys kind of think that 3 perfects this premise?
Yeah, I think 3 is a better movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm excited to do 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind watching more of the series, certainly.
Yeah,
just watch 2, 3, and New Nightmare.
Don't watch 2. 2 is terrible.
Watch 2.
I don't know what his obsession with 2 is.
2, like, I don't even know if that's even canonical. Like, it's such a weird film.
Yeah, that's the one that basically got ignored. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
It's just Freddy in the real world. It's boring. But just watch 3 and New Nightmare, and then if you kind of want to see just like bad films in this franchise, 4 and
Never
6.
watch 4 and 5.
4 is okay.
4 and 5 are the same movie, and I don't know which one's which, and they both suck.
But at least watch 6 because that one's really entertaining. It's bad, but it's entertaining. But anyway, and then of course the New Nightmare because it's amazing. It's proto Scream.
Yeah.
So,
and never watch the remake. It's the worst one.
Well, he's gonna have to because we'll have to cover that at some point. I think you put it on our list. I think. But
yes, I did.
Oh, and you're gonna be there for that one.
No.
I'll be there.
Wait, you don't want to rip apart a movie?
Okay.
It's like fuck. All right, so next up is Hellraiser from 1987, which continues to prove that 1987 was one of the best years in movies ever. Because you had this and like Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 to be specific, and a bunch of other like classics, all in that one year.
You get 2 movies and probably some others.
I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I know there's at least like 4 or 5 like big movies that I love that all came out in 1987. So since Doolittle just watched this for the first time recently, I'll let him tell us about Hellraiser.
Yeah, so Hellraiser, it's a great movie. It's an adaptation of the Clive Barker novel Hellbound Heart, which I've not read, but I've heard that this film is um, a direct adaptation because it's the same. Clive Barker also directed and wrote this film. And it almost feels like if I were to go back to that novel, it would be just kind of like a rough draft almost of this film, which is what I've heard from Austin and John. And it's basically about I can't remember the name. It's this like contraption that is sold to this person, and he it's kind of like a sadomasochist type thing where he's like tortured and experiences all these like pleasures or pleasures, and I wouldn't call that pleasures, but you know what I mean though, right? Like he and then you follow and his brother moves in with his fiance or not fiance wife, um, who the wife had committed infidelity, um, and slept with his brother, the brother who is dead now because of the contraption. Trying to get this all straight. And they're in the house and they're moving, and the father or he cuts his hand, or he gets a cut, and then it bleeds a little bit, and then a little bit of the brother comes back, and um, the wife finds out, oh, I've got to um, you know I've got to kill people and spill more blood in order to get back my lover. It's a film definitely. If I can put it very bluntly, definitely there's a lot of talk about like sexuality and infidelity, um, the kind of morally dubious places that it brings you. I guess. I'm sure that as we talk more about it, we'll get more to the core of it. Um, and yeah, that's the basic premise, and then the daughter gets involved, and that's a whole thing that we'll talk about. Definitely, it seems really
Yeah,
bad.
whenever people ask me about this movie, I always describe it as an erotic horror film, and I don't mean that in like a pornographic sense, but in the fact that it is more about sex, like you said.
I agree. And
Yeah,
go ahead. No, this is also your first viewing.
yeah, it's definitely a very interesting concept where you have these creatures, these explorers, if you will, who are essentially so bound to the idea of exploring pleasure that they just experiment so much to the point where they can no longer differentiate between pain and pleasure. As Frank says, Frank being, one of the, I guess, the main antagonist of the film, you know, pleasure and pain indivisible within their space. It's definitely an interesting thing, especially when you get into the idea of where sometimes of how the wife's guilt mixes with her pleasure in her, very messed up relationship with Frank, where you get to see the gradual deterioration of her character, but how she just generally enjoys it because she gets a thrill out of it. Yeah, there's a big through line. This is a very tightly written script.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a perfect movie if not for the fact that they ran out of budget and the animation looks terrible every so often. Other than that, the effects look awesome.
Yeah, and even then, I wasn't like deterred by the effects towards the end, because like it didn't take me out of the movie. I just kind of was like, yeah, that's a thing that happens. But yeah, no, the script's great. I can tell. This makes me want to read more of Clive Barker's work, and more, some other stuff that he's done, because he's quite a renaissance man. It seems he's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Clive Barker. I've read quite a bit of his work, and he ranges from horror to dark fantasy. He's even done like kids books, and they're also really interesting. I would say that the reason I would agree with you guys that the script is really well written.
He wrote the famous kids book. There's a pinhead at the end of this book. Sorry, that just came to me, and I needed to get it out. Go on.
Because this is almost like, Doolittle said, and I think Austin and I both agree. This is just a final draft of a book turned into a movie. Pinhead is one of my favorite movie monsters And also, we've talked about this before. You're very much not interested in a non-Robert Englund like Freddy Krueger. I have that with Pinhead. As interested as curious as I am, and my curiosity always gets the better of me about the upcoming, whenever that comes out, Hellraiser reboot. There's only one Pinhead, and it's Doug Bradley. Everything he says in this movie is just gold.
One for me too. I'm not interested in what the sequels do, which is make the Cenobites the main villains. What I like is how they're used in this movie, where they are there, but they're not all over the film. Like if you were to count their runtime, it's very short.
Yeah,
they're very sporadic,
they don't show up until like an hour in. And I agree with you to an extent. It's that weird thing, and I'm gonna call myself out here for being a total hypocrite because I agree with you, and that's the thing I hate most about the second movie is it humanizes. But I also have that thing where if I turn my brain off, I really love 3 because it's really stupid. And 4, so I was reading about this earlier today, and I saved it for the show. There is a director's cut out there for 4 that I would love to see. It's very like a rough work print version, so I'm hoping that eventually some studio will like pick it up and be like, "Oh, here's a box set of the first 4 Hellraiser movies because those are the only ones slightly worth watching." Like 3 and 4 are flawed films, but 5 through 9 are just utter dog shit. Trust me. Yeah, trust me. I've seen all of these movies.
Yeah, we can thank the Weinsteins on that one.
But the pitch for 4 before the studio interfered, and like 4 is one of those where the director had his name removed, and it's just like Alan Smithy or whatever. Was more of a like almost historical epic about the family that made the box, and it was going to be like in the original movie, Pinhead wasn't going to show up till later, and it was going to go through time. It starts in like the 18th century, and then would move to modern day, and then in the future. And that's why everybody considers, for Pinhead in space, because the very few scenes that are in the future are in space, and it was going to be the death of Pinhead and the Cenobites. But then the studio got their hooks in, and it was like, no, we need more Pinhead. People want to see Pinhead. And so it's a very compromised script.
Which is funny because 2 was also supposed to be the death of the Cenobites. So I guess, like, just odd-numbered Hellraiser films, that's where they die. And except then we pussy out.
But wouldn't it be even numbers?
Oh, sorry, yeah, even number.
This goes along to my general issue with sequels in general, because when you get a sequel to something that wasn't originally intended to sequels, it gets further and further away from the main theme and through line that gives it so much life. The idea of pleasure and pain mixing and how it relates to the main characters, because you don't just get that theme, you also get it contrasted with here is more wholesome pleasure, more innocence, and then you have this general temptation over here with this rather weird looking box that gives you a sense of like a fascination of what could be, because you're not content with how things are in the moment.
See, I fully agree with you on that. Now, I will say I think this movie leaves room for a sequel because just somebody else getting the box and telling like a different story with that. 2 is
that's what this should be as a franchise, is different stories about people who wind up getting this box, as opposed to being what it did become, which is a slasher series where Pinhead kills people.
Well, see,
it shouldn't be that way, because if you put him more and more towards the forefront, which he was never intended to, it just happened that
Clive Barker didn't even name that character. Yeah, like
no, I think his original name was
he didn't have a name.
It's just lead Cenobite if you go into the credits.
Like, yeah, something like that. I also saw like the because I saw it through Amazon Prime, and apparently he also had like an alternate name or something like that, like as
well.
Priest.
I think Clive Barker did another novel or something where he's called the Hell Priest, I think.
Something
but
like that.
Clive Barker also hates the series because of what happened to it.
Yeah,
understandably so.
Absolutely.
So I have read that other book. It's called The Scarlet Gospels. And it was a kind of a big deal because there's 2 characters that Clive Barker is known for. Pinhead from the movies, But on his book site, he has like a supernatural detective that will show up in random books. And Scarlet Gospel is supposed to be like the meeting of his two big characters. But you can tell he hates Hellraiser. His Pinhead is nothing like he is in anything else in that book. His whole thing in that book is just to take over hell. And he just wants power, and it's not a great book, in my opinion. But yeah, I agree with you. That's what the sequel should have been. Instead, everything after 4 is just, here's an old script that didn't get made. Let's shove Pinhead into it. And after a while, even if you're watching just for like Doug Bradley, because he kept coming back. Even he was like, no, fuck you, I'm not doing this anymore. And we got like discount Pinhead.
Big respect. But Doug Bradley is awesome. He has a fantastic presence and voice. He does what he is supposed to do in this movie.
I think all the actors are really good in this movie. I don't think there's a weak link in this cast for me personally.
No.
Yeah. Frank is also pretty good.
Yeah, even I think the woman who plays Kirsty. I don't think I've seen her in anything else, but she has like a presence in this film that I really like. And I think she's really good too. And so is her father and Julia, the like her stepmom that's with Frank.
The dad
Chapman plays Frank. Andrew Robinson plays Larry.
The dad might be my favorite of the human characters. Because he's really good as just like the innocent dad who's just trying to like provide a good like home for his wife and his. But then he's also really intimidating when he becomes Frank. And he's the only one I've seen in something else, and it's like a 2-minute role in Child's Play 3.
Yeah, it's very good that the actor manages to like flip the switch pretty well, so much so that you can actually see that it's someone underneath. It's a good testament to the actor and his skill.
I think any scene with Kirsty and Frank, like those two scenes, like the scene where Frank takes over. Is his name Larry? That's the dad's name, right?
Larry is the dad. Frank is the evil one.
Yes. Yeah. That scene is very disturbing. Where she's like really like shocked about everything. That was pretty intense. And the scene where Kirsty opens gets the box and she is confronted by the Cenobites is also just like very unpleasant because you're like, oh my god, because you've got like these like characters and you've got like the nun, I think, is that her name? Like she like has like a really creepy voice and you're
She's
just like,
called a female Cenobite played by Grace Kirby.
My name for her is Vagina Throat. She's got that like thing going on there.
It could be deliberate, actually.
But wasn't she like a nun in the past though? I think that's what John said one time. Like me and John were talking about it in the past. I'm not sure though.
I was
the chatter was like a kid.
Yeah, I was looking into it because there's like different comics that have explored like the backstory of the Cenobites. And she was originally a nun. The Chatterer was like a 12-year-old kid who had opened the box. The other thing to note as well, of course, is Clive Barker has returned to this franchise multiple times, just not in movies. Austin, you really need to read the last, I think it's the last run, the last that I'm aware of, Hellraiser run from like Boom that he wrote, because he brings back like Kirsty and Pinhead and all of that and does new stuff with them. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But Austin, you made your comment towards her slit. Apparently, the Cenobites are in Hellbound Heart are called the Order of the Gash.
But I also have not seen that actress in anything other than the 3 sequels that she's in, and one of those is just like archived footage of 2.
Which like a cameo, I think, in 1
and 6, because that was the big thing with 6. We got Kirsty back. Oh, she's in like 2 minutes of this movie. But I am looking here. She is supposed to appear in one of the new episodes of that Creep Show TV show.
Oh, cool.
So I'm interested to see that.
Because I think she's really good in this movie, and I don't know, I can't really explain it, but she's got like a lot of presence, I think.
I think she's probably one of my favorite final girls.
That's what I thought too, yeah.
Yeah, no, she's very good. I loved her.
My favorite is probably Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2. Because I love like the stuff with her and her child psychology, how she uses that against Jason. But Kirsty is definitely up there.
I mean, I definitely like Kirsty more than any Friday the 13th girl. But,
well, I just mean I like how clever she is. Like, I think
I'm just joking. But
I just think they had a good idea with the final fight of Part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the effects I think in this film are all really good. The Cenobites look really cool. Each one of them has kind of their own distinct look. You got Pinhead, Vagina Throat, Nemesis, and that big that big thing, yeah.
Butterball.
Basket case if he had like a giant worm body.
It's funny that you mentioned that because originally they were all supposed to like talk and interact with Kirsty, but half of them couldn't say their lines in that makeup. That's why Pinhead has all their lines, because he was the one that could talk the best.
I mean, occasionally
that's not super surprising with Nemesis, yeah.
And it's the Chatterer. Fuck you very much.
Yeah, the Chattering Cenobite, the female Cenobite, the Butterball Cenobite,
and lead Cenobite, yeah.
Yeah,
Pinhead, damn it.
Oh yeah, we should also credit Oliver Smith for playing the monster version of Frank as well. You know,
yeah, because I mean, the scene where Frank is like reborn through the floor is one of the.
It's so good.
It's great.
The practical effects are fantastic.
Goosebumps, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even just like his makeup, I think, like he looks wet in a way that, you know, he's just muscle and not flesh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, and it helps that the lighting works really well with that too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I could be wrong, but I think this is Clive Barker's first movie. Am I correct about that, John?
Let me check.
Yeah.
Because if that is the case, like that's really impressive for a first-time director.
No, I think it's first, but his first was Underworld and then Rawhead Rex.
So
this is his directorial debut.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So yes, because he was not happy about how Rawhead Rex came out. If you've seen the Red Letter Media video on this, apparently that movie was supposed to be all about like toxic masculinity and sex and shit like that, and like none of that is in the movie, and he got really mad. So he's like, the next one he was like, you know, I'll just do it myself. I'll direct the damn thing. And
I own that movie, but I haven't watched it yet.
And didn't he also direct like some theatrical productions, like some plays? I think I thought he had like a theater company, Clive Barker.
Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, he did some plays starting in the 70s. The first one that I see a credit to is The Clowns of Sodom in 1976 with the Mute Pantomime Theater.
Oh wow! Did he direct that? Or did he just write it?
I think he just wrote it. I think.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. So apparently for the remake, they're going, if this is true, they're going to go back to just calling it The Hellbound Heart, which I think is interesting. I can't bring myself to be excited about that. He's writing the script, which I guess is the one thing I have hope for. It'll probably just be like the same script.
Next draft.
It's been like 30 years, so he's still working on that damn script.
What if he goes back and he makes it more like the Hellbound Heart? Like some of the improvements for this movie takes him back.
But you know, like, I gotta
not being the daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
Very weird.
But yeah, I mean, like Clive Barker had an interesting like early career because he directed and wrote Hellraiser. He wrote Hellraiser 2, which I think is why a lot of people like that one, because it is written by him. I just think it's too ambitious for what it's got. and I don't like what it does with the Cenobites in that one as much. But then, Nightbreed came out right after that, which I have to see, and then he moved right into producing, Candyman, which we all thought was awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Hellraiser 3, which is dumb, but I like it. But I almost wonder if some of those, if it was just like, oh, it's based on your movie, we'll give you like a producer's credit.
Probably.
Maybe, yeah.
Probably.
Seems like a
cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But also, one of just the most like brutal ways to kill people in these movies with the hooks.
Yeah, it's not like it's anymore.
When he when it's Frank, but he's in Larry's skin and he's all stretched out.
Jesus wept.
I mean, sometimes I wonder about like how brutal it technically is if compared to some of Jason's kills or Leatherheads or whatnot. But this one,
did you just say Leatherhead?
I guess I did, and I should not have said that.
It is
the
a
Ninja Turtles villain. Was he going around massacring people?
What I meant to say was that there's definitely an elongated feel to these kills.
Yeah.
Which really goes into the theme of, drawing something out for as much pain as possible.
The MPAA had a huge problem with some of that violence, and they had to cut it down. Which is interesting that they cut that stuff, but they didn't cut any of the violence with the wife killing people. Because I feel like this is gonna get into like a moral kind of argument, but like the violence that the wife commits is like actually repeatable, while the violence with like the Cenobites and the device, I don't think you can really repeat that.
Not with that attitude, sir.
Well, I think the thing is the wife, when she kills someone, it's just like a quick blow to the head or two. With Cenobite, it's like slow and like he's being pulled apart.
I will say, I do think a lot of that stuff is effective the way it is. So, like, I'm not gonna say like the MPA is right because I haven't seen what was originally there, but I do think that what we do get is very much like a less is more type situation.
Well, I agree. I don't have any issues with the way it is. I think I totally it works very, very well. I just thought that was interesting to point out.
No, I agree with you. It's amazing that this movie wasn't cut down more, especially certain things like when Frank comes back, or even his look. Really, like I don't know.
To go back to what Milton was saying for a second, I think in a way this is more brutal than anything in like a Friday the 13th film because they're allowed to like linger on it. Whereas with Jason, they had to cut those kills down, which is just, again, the MPA being selective on what movies they'll allow to show violence and what they won't. Whereas Jason is probably more brutal in just the second, like bending someone backwards in half or cutting someone's head off. It's like a second, like a frame. Whereas Pinhead, you're lingering on this guy being ripped to pieces by chains with hooks on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difference between the two, not that I'm saying that like right off one of them, but obviously like one is more kind of trashy, you know what I mean? And then that's again not me trashing on Friday the 13th, that's the appeal of those movies.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that maybe goes into it, like this is a movie that has something to say while Friday the 13th doesn't really. So I wonder if that's some of their leeway, but the MPA is really hard to read to begin with.
I mean, doesn't Hellraiser have only like a budget of like $1 million?
It's a really small budget movie.
Yeah, that was.
But I'm
1 million.
But I mean, I guess at the same time, Friday the 13th is an even smaller budget because I think the first one's like 500,000.
The first one had around the same budget as Halloween.
Oh wow!
The thing with Friday the 13th that saved it was they got Tom Savini. So the kills, what you see of them all look. But that's topic for another show, which might be interesting to discuss.
If we could, let's talk about the score because I think the score is great.
I was actually going to bring that up because Doolittle and I were talking about the other day. about that the other day, and I've tried to like listen to scores more often. I love the score to this movie. It's very classic, like gothic horror in a way.
Yeah.
Especially that like main theme.
Yeah, Barker said that he wanted like the group Coil to do the music for the film. I'm so glad that didn't happen because I think Christopher Young just knocks it out of the park here. And
Yeah,
it's
and
like one
Christopher
of the
Young.
times when the producers actually make a good decision.
Yeah, and Christopher Young takes some of Coyle's original tracks and reincorporates it into the score. So if that work isn't totally lost, but I think Young, I don't know, Young's definitely one of my favorite horror composers because it's just such a like classical gothic kind of feel, and it actually feels very atmospheric. And I just really like what he does with his pieces.
Yeah, no,
You know,
Young definitely showed reverence for the fact of, oh yeah, I passed up for these guys, but Clive Barker seems to think they're cool. Also, he's a director. Sure, I'll incorporate some of their themes into this.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. I don't really think Film Future as a production company has done much, but well, it at least was a good makeup for this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love that like main piece they use when the Cenobites show up. That like I don't even know how to describe it, but you guys know what I'm talking about, right? That like almost like rising orchestra sound.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
There's just something about it that just gets you. It's awesome. Like credit to Candyman, which is another Clive Barker adaptation, which seems to like mimic a lot of the like good production and like sound design of something like this. Of something like Hellraiser coming like, almost 10 years or well, more like half a decade, but
Yeah, I mean, and I really like Candyman. I want to rewatch it. The thing with Candyman versus this is just the author kind of perfecting an idea, whereas Candyman is taking that one of Clive's ideas and doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is such a smaller story. Like that's more of a mystery movie, where somebody's trying to figure something out. That movie, like I think I said in that video, reminds me a lot in terms of premise of the Ring, where you have like a character that's kind of being hunted by this mythical being, and they're trying to investigate it. Well, here it's almost like a closed room drama. Like we're stuck in one house through the majority of the film, and obviously they bring people in, but it's much smaller.
That's
Very
crazy to
intimate,
think
yeah.
that was 14
Mhm.
episodes ago.
What's that?
That was 14 episodes ago.
Damn.
Yeah. But yeah, and if I may for just a moment, because I have pulled up some of the stuff they had to cut, and a lot of it is just small things.
Okay.
2.5 shots were cut from the first Hammer murder, including a close up of the hammer lodged in the victim's head.
Oh, okay.
In the scene where Julia murders another man, the actor playing the victim felt that it made sense for him to do so naked. The nude murder scene was shot, but ultimately replaced with a semi-clothed version. I'm kind of glad for that one.
I mean, I can understand where he was coming from.
Yeah. Close-ups of Kirsty sticking her hand into Frank's stomach, exposing his guts. I'm assuming that's when he's all like bloody and muscly. And finally, a longer version of the scene where Frank is being torn into pieces by the Cenobites' hooks. And there was a final shot where his head explodes and his brain messily splashes out.
Oh wow.
It's probably where you more swing and then we don't see as much as we probably could.
I was just gonna say maybe it is more effective if we don't see that.
Apparently, he also shot, and this is in Clive's own words here. I shot a much hotter flashback sequence that they would allow us to cut. Then they would allow us to cut in. Mine was more explicit and less violent. I wanted to substitute one kind of undertow for another. I had much more explicit sexual encounter between Frank and Julia, but they said no. Let's take out the sodomy and put in the flick knife. Okay then.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
That is a really weird scene too, just the way it is in the movie.
Yeah.
Because like if I remember correctly, that's the scene where they're having sex and like Frank shows up and just like starts cutting into a dead rat. I know I had a couple of scenes like that I almost think you could have cut, but overall, like I think as it is, it's a great movie.
Probably enough of what Barker is saying, and granted, I probably would not like to see it, but in some ways, sodomy might make more sense towards the theme. I don't know. In any case, it works, thankfully.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it was cut down, so it loses the message of the movie.
Yeah. Anything else that we really want to go over about Hellraiser?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Maybe to any anime fans out there, I see huge inspiration with this and Berserk. I was surprised to see how much of the God Hands design is very similar to a lot of the Cenobites design as well. In some ways, especially with the Butterball Cenobite.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That makes sense. The comparison I got was like some video games probably took a lot of inspiration from this. I mean, clearly Austin said Nemesis, but also some of the Silent Hill games have
absolutely
kind of concepts.
Well, and they kind of jump into the sexual thing here and there too. Yeah.
Silent Hill. Oh yeah, Silent Hill 2 is definitely about a lot of that stuff. Yeah. Takes a more psychological approach, but yes, it's very much kind of talking about those more sensitive topics that people don't like talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny enough, the Butterball Cenobite. The first thing I thought of when I saw it was in the Meth Madness when you see all the creatures chasing Sam Neill at the end. I wonder if that was an inspiration for that movie.
Possible.
But I don't think I have anything else for Hellraiser. It's a masterpiece.
Okay, so the other thing I did want to mention, because we talked about the effects more towards the beginning, I almost also kind of wish they had either changed or cut the very last last shot of the movie with that weird flying thing.
Oh, the like Hell Angel.
Yeah, because it looks bad, and I don't know what's happening.
I guess it was just to
I don't
establish.
have an issue with that. I don't know.
I guess it was just to establish the fact that there was always some weird figure like as a witness that could also just work towards just making sure that the Cenobites are just a temptation for man.
It brings it back to where it started. Yeah, so it can all happen again.
So, and the other thing and I will say I give props to this movie as well, because not many movies make me like uncomfortable watching them. There is something uncomfortable watching that old like homeless guy eat those flies in the pet shop.
God,
definitely.
That's the thing that ties both of these films together. In the first one, they spit out like bugs, and in this one, they're eating bugs. It all makes sense.
It might also be just a theological underpinning with Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, essentially, and turning into some demon thing later on.
Well, that's why that you have to turn the magic conch in order to summon the Cenobites, right?
Yeah.
Raise the magic conch.
I also love just the design of the box or the lament configuration, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And it's so cool just watching it like unfold itself.
That puzzle box is cool.
That's one of those props I would like to have at some point. Yeah. Not like, I don't mean like the exact prop, but you know what I mean, like that kind of thing.
Remind me, Austin. I want to show you this box set I got for the first two Hellraiser movies. It comes in the box.
I think you have. Because that's familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and it opens up and it's got the two discs in it. But have you seen the Arrow release that they did?
Not that I know of.
It's like the first three, and it's called the Scarlet release or something like that. I'll look it up. But it's like kind of like the big, anniversary box set, but just the first three because they know 3 cares after that.
Thanks, Weinsteins.
But I agree with Austin. This is near perfect film. Pinhead, since we brought it up with Freddy as well, I'm gonna be honest. Pinhead is probably number 4 on my like monster / like horror villain. I know he's not really the villain, but you know what I mean.
Just like horror character, like monster characters. Yeah,
he's right under Freddy for me.
Yeah, he'd definitely be up there. Like, I don't know exactly where. Like I said, I got to think overall, just like horror characters, because there's so many. But no, he's great.
I have a ranking for that, but he would probably be up there in like the top like 50.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wouldn't be your thing, Austin, but my dad used to listen to this like extreme metal band from like, England, and Doug Bradley would do voiceovers for their records, and it almost sounded exactly like Pinhead doing like a voiceover for a metal album. It was awesome.
I paid Pinhead to do it.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have on my wall a signed picture of Pinhead from Doug Bradley. It's one of my like favorite possessions.
How well can you angle that camera, John?
You wouldn't be able to see it. This room is pitch black. Oh. I will take a picture and post it in the Haven of Horror Discord.
Okay.
For you guys.
There we go. Now we're all kind of on equal levels.
Yeah. Something. Yeah.
I don't need to see your crotch, George.
So I'm gonna give this one a 4.5 out of 5. It's one of the most unique horror films of the 80s. And now I have like a headache from Inception.
There's like 15 me's.
Sorry.
One is bad enough.
I love it.
But yeah, I lived with this movie for most of my life. My dad was a big fan of this franchise. And that's kind of why I'm more forgiving on those earlier sequels. Because I loved my dad, but he also very much cared more about just like the shallow parts of Hellraiser, you know, like the monsters and the aesthetic, which is fine.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine.
But like we'd throw like Hellraiser 3 and 4, like those, you know, Pinhead gets more like one-liners and stuff in those. We just like throw them back at each other. It was great.
That's funny. I can't even imagine Pinhead having one-liners. Like that's really
Remind me after the stream. There's a couple I want to send you that I think are hilarious.
Okay.
But yeah,
it is funny to think of like just off of this movie that like he's running around cracking lines.
And it's weird because that really only sticks for like 3 and 4. Because like 5 and 6 are the same movie, even more to an extent than like Nightmare 4 and 5 are. And he doesn't show up until the last like 5 minutes of the movie.
He like hooks somebody and he goes, "I hooked a big one."
No, so the twist for 5 and 6 is the exact same twist, that the protagonist is already dead, and the whole film has been him in hell being tortured by Pinhead.
Yeah, that's what I heard about that one, yeah.
So Pinhead just shows up to explain the entire movie and then leaves. But yeah, so
thanks, Weinsteins.
So we're gonna switch up the order a little bit. Austin, you went first with the ratings last time.
I went second.
Well, you went first out of the 3. Doolittle, what do you think of Hellraiser? What would you give it?
5.
5?
Yeah, out of 5. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude. All right, Milton.
I give it a 5 out of 5,000. It has bankruptcy of imagination, as Roger Ebert. I don't understand what that guy's issue is with some horror movies and just franchises.
I was really hoping that would come up because Hellraiser, I always laugh about how he like trashed on The Thing and Hellraiser, but then was like, Anaconda. That was a really creative movie.
What? I didn't even really like Anaconda.
He also hated Day of the Dead, but loved Dawn of the Dead.
But like this movie has no imagination. Anaconda, creative masterpiece.
No, it gets me a 5 out of 5. I think this movie is great, and it should have had no sequels.
I agree with you.
Fair enough.
Austin, are you gonna cinch and put this in our unofficial Hall of Fame 5 out of 5 films?
I'm gonna give it a 1.
Whatever.
A 1 out of 1 is a pretty good rating, though. I agree with Austin.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 0.5. No, I'm gonna give it a 5. This is where John fucks us.
No, I gave it a 4.5.
Oh, we did.
Well, but remember, as long as
Ooh.
can I finish?
No.
As long as the
Ooh.
majority gives it a 5 out of 5, it still goes on the list.
Oh, okay.
So it's 3 out of 4.
I'm still gonna boo you. Boo.
No, 4.5 isn't unreasonable though. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think it's very good.
I just think there's a couple of things, like the script is perfect, but there's also just a couple scenes I might have changed a little bit. But it might just be me. I might feel differently on a rewatch. But it's still one of like the best movies like ever. I swear to God.
Especially from that decade. I think it's definitely one of the best horror films from the 80s.
Yeah, and that's saying something because like 80s is like the golden age for horror, in my opinion.
For me, this is one of the most unique and creative horror films I think I've ever seen. Like, there's nothing that I've seen where I'm like, that's like Hellraiser.
I agree. So I will add that to the list. If you guys would like to see that list, there's only like 3 or 4 movies on there right now. I know The Thing is. That movie's a masterpiece as well.
That makes sense.
If it hadn't been for Milton, the 2 Romero movies would be on there. Yeah, so right now, for anyone who's curious, there are 4 films on our 5 out of 5. These are perfect movie list. The Thing, The Witch, Hereditary, and now Hellraiser. Which is cool.
That mix of movies.
So next, absolutely. So next week, we are going to have another special guest, Connor Nielsen. Almost said that wrong. It's been a long, like, we've been at this for almost 2 hours.
For over 9,000.
Exactly.
Anyways,
he wants to do The People Under the Stairs, and Austin recommended you pair that with The Hills Have Eyes. So that's what we're gonna do. Austin, obviously,
which is funny because we did like kind of unintentional Wes Craven kind of thing between this week and next week, because we obviously did Nightmare, and then next week we got a double feature.
Yeah. And obviously, Austin, we'd love to have you there as well, because I know you said you love The Hills Have Eyes quite a bit.
I should be there, yeah. I have to find a way to watch People Under the Stairs, but I should be there.
I've never seen People Under the Stairs.
Neither have I.
Neither have I. I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
Hills of Eyes is awesome, though.
Oh yeah.
The other thing,
hills are alive with eyes.
The hills are alive with the sounds of.
Well, what's up?
The other thing is, Austin, I'd like to get with you because I just got resubscribed to Shudder, and since that is all horror, I'd like to do something where we maybe just like take like an afternoon on Saturday or Sunday when we're not doing a show. If you're not busy, just like pick a movie and maybe do a commentary on it or something.
Okay, sounds good.
I paid for it. I might as well use the damn thing.
Can I come too, John?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Yeah. Yeah. You're of course more than welcome. Doolittle. It was great having you. You did a great job.
Yeah. Thank you.
We really liked having you here.
Yeah, it was great having you.
If you ever want to replace Austin,
please do.
Yeah, see, he doesn't even want to be here. We had to bribe him with Hellraiser to get him to come on the show.
And since you shaved, you look like a mix between Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Harold Ramis. So everybody would rather have you here.
That's the most unique comparison someone made.
I can see the Harold Ramis.
I can see both the Andrew Garfield thing and the Harold Ramis thing.
It's really funny. I've heard people tell me I look like a character on Friends, which is like I don't love that because I think that they're talking.
Yeah, I don't see Ross as much.
Yeah,
I don't either.
Look like that guy.
No.
But anyway,
yeah,
guys,
Ramis.
This was episode 20. I mean, I have to be honest. When I approached Austin one day, we were just chatting. I was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to bring this horror show idea I had back." I didn't think I'd ever like get to the point where I have 3 co-hosts. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna call it quits for here. Austin's probably like, finally, I have an Xbox that's waiting for me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah,
for you to get that.
we will be back next week. People Under the Stairs, Hills Have Eyes. Austin, let me know if you find a way to watch People Under the Stairs. I'd offer to let you use my Voodoo account, but I guess that's just not a thing in Canada.
Yeah, I'm just gonna look to see if I can rent it somewhere. It shouldn't be an issue.
Cool. But yeah, we will be back next Saturday, and we appreciate you guys. Have a good one.